Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Abel Kane from the UNESCO Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education for Peace and Sustainable Development in New Delhi, India. On behalf of the director of the Institute, Dr. Anantha Duraipa, it's my pleasure to welcome you to our third and final TAGe dialogue on the purpose of education. TAGe being the Talking Across Generations on Education. I'm very happy to introduce our two youth who will be speaking today, Pragya from Nepal, Jaimin from India, and they'll be joined by an education leader, world-renowned, Dr. Akpezi from Nigeria, and they'll be led by Chaker, our moderator from Syria, Canada, based in Lebanon. In our first dialogue, which was held last week, we did a quick poll of our 330 attendees. And the question in the poll was, are you happy with your education system? Now, 14% said they were happy, 25% were neutral, but it's the others. 43% said they were unhappy, 16% said they were very unhappy. Now that's shockingly high. Now this is very small, but it's still eye-opening. At our second dialogue on Monday, where we had Shushmita from India, Michael from Lebanon, and Ambassador Novo from Portugal, Shushmita made a wonderful comment on the future of education. The ability to learn and unlearn things is the key skill for the next 50 years. We have to be able to adapt in order to live better lives. And so that's the message. If we're to change our education systems to cultivate happiness, well-being, and flourishing, then we need to get to the root of this unhappiness, and we need to completely reimagine the purpose of education. And this is why I'm very proud to be at MGIP, the Mahatma Gandhi Institute, because we sincerely believe and we love our job of empowering youth to become their own change makers. We provide them with concrete skills in socio-emotional learning, and we give them platforms like this, the Talking Across Generations on Education. We gather youth who have had to participate in rigorous online discussions in their hundreds, making thousands of comments. We filter the best of these comments and we select the best of these 6 youth to then dialogue with renowned, undisputed education world leaders. And so we're very happy to have Dr. Akpezi today to challenge them and for them to challenge her to have a dialogue. After this dialogue, this is the third and final dialogue. If you're wondering what's going to happen, my colleagues, Kwane, Aditya, Himanshi, Lakshmi, they're gonna put their head down together with Chaker and the youth that have been working with us, and they're gonna produce a succinct, a cogent, hopefully a very beautifully attractive policy brief. And this policy brief is going to be submitted to our UNESCO headquarters for this initiative that's happening at headquarters. It's called the International Commission on the Futures of Education. And they're going to produce a report that if done well to the famed UNESCO standards, is going to be highly influential in determining the direction of education across the world for the next 5 to 10 years. A world that's ravaged by COVID-19, climate change disasters, deadly violent race-related riots all over the world, and many other systemic inequalities. We all here today, where we were in the numbers, probably several hundred, to listen to a dialogue on the futures of education because we care deeply about this. We know this is the solution, but what is the solution? And that's why I'm so happy to hand over to our panelists, dialogue freely, respectfully question each other, challenge each other, while we sit back and enjoy. Chaker will make sure that he will fairly play nice referee, make sure there's fireworks, but everybody should be happy at the end and have fun. Thank you all very much, and I'll see you at the end of the dialogue. Chaker.
Thank you, Abel. Welcome everyone to our third and final TAGe, Talking Across Generations. Today we're going to be focusing on how will education contribute or not to a better society. We are 2020. We've seen We've had challenges to our education system. Our learning system got disrupted because of COVID. Other factors as well have been affecting people from getting their education. We will be asking, we'll be discussing several questions, but I'd like to also welcome our attendees and let them know that we have a question and answer section in the bottom of the window here. You can ask us your questions. We'll answer them throughout, we'll pick some questions and answer them throughout our session. And then in the last 15 minutes, you can ask questions and we will invite some of you to ask our panelists and Dr. Akpezi, our policymaker. We'll get into it. We'll start right away. Also, feel free to comment in the chat part, questions in the Q&A, and we'll be putting up some polls where you guys can answer with us these questions and we will be discussing them. I'm joined today by two youth speakers. I'll start with you, Pragya. Pragya, what will societies for you look like in the future? Let's say in 50 years. How do you envision our societies?
Thank you, Chaker. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everyone. So in 50 years' time, classroom will become less important, I think. Physical classroom is less vital towards creating a learning environment. So I believe that online resource library built with open access resources, they will be more important, and more education will take place in the field. So more educators are realizing that classroom-based learning isn't the whole picture when it comes to education. So project-based learning and different kinds of students will be challenged to bring up new projects with creative ideas, and also seeing mentoring making its way to schools will be a new way to envision education system in 50 years. So I believe that students will be able to get on one-on help whenever they need it with mentors, and also student ownership will increase in different like technological areas with different kinds of subjects integrated, like as in science and art integrated and becoming a beautiful subject. So I think in 50 years time, I believe different course of studies will take us beautiful creation of different varieties of innovators and critical thinkers. Thank you, Chaker.
So, Pragya, do you see us with, as societies in the future, do you see this big shift in even what we're interested in terms of learning? Or, like you're talking about sectors like technology and other things. What other sectors do you feel like could emerge as well strongly into, from the education towards this to benefit the society?
So I think there'll be a lot of changes that are coming in the next 50 years, like a mixture of new technology and changes in strategy, which will mean a much more rewarding experience for teachers and students, like skills, public speaking skills, emotional intelligence, university education will not only confine themselves to theoretical knowledge, but also in different creating projects and enhancing social and emotional skills with subject knowledge in interdisciplinary arts. Yeah.
Thank you. Jaimin, societies in the future, do you believe we will, or do you envision we are equal, we are reaching equality of economic equality, political equality, or do you think we're gonna go towards the inequality, like we're gonna divert from values we like to stick to?
Okay, so firstly, good afternoon, everyone. Now, when we talk about the future society, we need to make a distinction between quote unquote better society and quote unquote ideal society, because generally we see that people take it both the terms synonymously, but there is a thin line of difference between an ideal society and a better society. So, we need to understand that a better society is basically a step forwards towards an ideal society. It is not equivalent to ideal society, number one thing. Number two, when we talk about education, we need to understand that, in 50 years time framework, it is not only education which is going to change. It is the political scenario which is bound to change. It is the economic scenario which is bound to change. And it is the social scenario which is bound to change. And when we talk about education in 50 years framework, we have to realize that it has to be in accordance with the changes which are bound to happen politically, socially, and economically. Now, when I talk about political changes or political administrative changes, so basically, in the last session itself, Michael has described it quite beautifully. Also, in future, we are bound to see more and more democratic institutions. This is what my prediction is, number one. As far as economy is concerned, we are bound to see the knowledge-based economy. And the basic unit or the basic entity of this knowledge-based economy is the education. So that is the main reason why education has to be looked from the economic perspective. But the economic perspective is necessary but not sufficient enough. So here comes the social perspective. And when we talk about social perspective, then we really have to get through the regional inequalities which are present, not only in the context of digital divide, but also various stereotypes and stigmas which we have inherently, which we do have inherited from the past and history. So education has to be looked from these three lenses as well, and has to be imagined in line with the changes which are bound to happen politically, socially, and economically.
Thank you, Jaimin. I'm going to put this question up actually for our attendees to answer. What will societies look like in the future? So the MGIEP team will be putting up this question. I invite our attendees to let us know. The question is up now. Dr. Akpezi, while our attendees are answering this question, I'd like to comment on a couple of things. Pragya was talking about a whole shift in our education focus, in new subjects emerging, in new fields, in new focus, and a new structure for education. Are we going to be ready to adapt to this dream that our generation has for the next 50 years? Do we have the pillars that Pragya and Jaimin are talking about in order for the education sector to innovate itself, to modernize itself? Or is it going to be a very slow and disappointing process?
Yes, thank you very much, Chaker. First of all, I just want to thank the Mahatma Gandhi Institute for inviting me, and thank you all for being on this panel. I actually agree with most of what Pragya and Jaimin have been saying. What education is going to look like in 50 years' time is actually going to be more exciting. And all those things that, Pragya has said, critical thinking, knowledge-based society, the technology, there's going to be less attention in classrooms, but then we're talking about a better society. And as they were talking, I wanted to ask, are these things going to lead us to a better society? And I think Jaimin came very close to it, when he talked about that it's not dependent only on education. But what is education? Does education only happen in schools? Does it happen at home? No. Does it happen in the business sectors and the government? And if these things don't come together, 50 years time, is it going to be better? I am not that confident that 50 years time is going to be better than this, but it's going to be more interesting. We're going to be doing interesting things. The technology will be specific, fantastic. But then education is as good as the society, the values, the politics, the economy that produce it. So if we continue, I am not positive of what it will look like. But if you talk about exciting, yes, it will be.
Let's see the results of our attendees, what they think. 41% said the society in the future will be technologically advanced, which is what you were saying, Dr. Akpezi. It's interesting, exciting, new things. Then we have we have uncertain and unpredictable and unequal socially, economically, and politically, each got around 20%, 122, 119. Only 13% of our attendees believe the future is going to be peaceful and unsustainable. That's a little bit sad, but it is aligned with what Dr. Akpezi was saying. It will be exciting, but there will be challenges. Speaking about the challenges, I'll move to the next. I'll ask you, Pragya, what are some challenges that we might be seeing overall? Dr. Akpezi said something beautiful right now, that education is very important, but there are values as well that need to be holistic in the society. Okay, while this is taking place, what are some challenges that societies will face in the future that could affect those values or could affect also the education sector?
Thank you, Chaker. I totally agree with Dr. Akpezi. So in the future, I believe that educators must be brave enough to change some of the things that are not working.
Sorry, Pragya. Yeah, sorry, Pragya. We're not talking about education. I'm going to move to education in the next question. I'm talking first in general. When we're talking about that society, what are some challenges that you see will affect the society as a whole? Then we're going to dive into the education.
Okay, thank you, Chaker, for clearing it. I think in society there'll be challenges of social inequality. First of all, like there are many privileged people in different parts of the world where there are like different unfortunate people who are not able to afford one meal a day. So social and economic inequality is the first challenge. And also the weaknesses in the political system and policy making system is the most hindrance in developing countries like Nepal, which has created the gap between the resources and the societal challenges that has grown in from these political and societal problems. So I believe that these problems would arise from in this 50 years time.
Dr. Akpezi, Pragya just mentioned the first thing that came to her mind as a challenge is the social inequality. Okay, let's take year 2000 and year 2020. Okay, do you believe that in social equality, have we done successful strikes, or are we going backward and we're not actually on the right track?
I think it is clear. It's not even thinking, it's what one sees with all the reactions we've been having, in recent times, we've had the Black Lives Matters. I mean, I don't use the term black because I'm not black, I'm brown, but that all lives matter. So we've been having all this. So it is actually clear that we are far from the target. We are not there yet, but what we do have a lot of documents, we have a lot of policies, we have a lot of goals, international goals, We've had from the Agenda 21, Millennium Development Goals, the Sustainable Development Goals. We have the Earth Charter. We know where we want to be. We know what we don't want, but we're not going there. We're not. We're not going in that directions. So, and I think that what we need to do now is to actually just stop and really say this is where we want to go. And make a choice to go there. I think we really haven't made the choice. The choice, maybe some people have, and some people have not. So it's a situation where we have the world is in conflict. And this is reflected in the kind of education that happens in the classrooms. And maybe later on, I'll give you examples why I say that.
I'm going to actually, with Jaimin, Dr. Akpezi, I'd love to hear your real examples. Let's see first our attendees, what they think of challenges that societies will face in the future. I'm going to put some answers up for our attendees right now, whether this is war, whether this is advanced and uncontrollable technologies, climate change, migration, and pandemics. These 5 things, there are challenges that we did see in the past 20 years, and as of recently, the COVID-19 pandemic, which is a major challenge that locked down specifically, the entire world, specifically our education system. There was a question, Jaimin, I'd like to ask it to you. It's from one of our attendees. They said, okay, so what happened? One of our major challenges are people who are going to be forgotten in this fantastic, exciting technology we're talking about. There are people who don't have the internet. There are people who live in rural areas that their connection may be poor. Connectivity, accessibility. These are all major challenges that that we will face. Look at the pandemic right now. Jaimin, do you think our world, our systems, our governments, in this latest pandemic, the COVID-19, do you think we played it fair in the way we responded towards the vulnerable, or do you think there's a lot of room still, to be better, to face this challenge?
Yeah, so as I initially mentioned that there is a digital divide, and we do need to look into this digital divide. To be very very precise about your question, no, we have not. And why we have not? Let me tell that. Whenever we talk about the government and the administrative unit, we generally expect them to make policies and then to implement. There are always 2 aspects in policy making. One is the top-down model. Another one is the bottom-up approach. We cannot have a top-down model that the highest executive unit is just pushing downwards in a hierarchical manner. We have to have a bottom-up approach. That is, things begin at a fundamental level. Things begin at a grassroots level. Things begin at basic rural and basic urban areas. And this is what we see that the most of the governments, I won't say all, but most of the governments have forgotten, particularly when we talk in the context of COVID-19. So this bottom-up approach is something which we need to have, because you see that, even in the context of education, we see that it doesn't happen that, someone is bringing new education policy and things are going to change, overnight. No. We need to understand that things change at classroom level, from classroom level to school level, from school level to province level, from province level to country level. And this is how a bottom-up approach has to be there. And this is what we really need to understand while implementing the policy, while going for the policy implementation aspect.
The bottom to top model in education, starting from the classroom towards the society. Very interesting, Jaimin. Let's put up first the results of our poll about the challenges that we'll face. 44%, Dr. Akpezi, I love your comment on this. 44% of our attendees, the majority, said that the major challenge is going to be advanced and uncontrollable technologies. Do you agree with such concern from?
Yes, I think.
I thought people are going to say war and conflict. War and conflict is only 17%, the third common answer. What do you think of our attendees' answer about advanced and uncontrollable technology as a challenge, not as a blessing?
Yes, I think it is a challenge because we are allowing all this advancement in artificial intelligence, in all kinds of scientific models and algorithms, and we are not putting in controls. We are teaching them in schools. Our children have access to them. I mean, you just go on the internet, and we are not being taught how to use them. That, yes, you have this, but then you don't use these things. You use these things in the context of respecting other people, in the context of ensuring that people have freedom. So with this technology, you can erode on people's privacy. You can control people. You can do all kinds. You can kill, and you can also give life. I mean, we saw during the pandemic, that technology was used to give life, to preserve life. We had the scientific models, that were used, artificial intelligence as well. But then during the pandemic, we also saw the dark side of this fear of technology. We saw civilization without ethics. We saw medical science without equity. We saw governance without justice. And these are the responses that we would have if our educational system and priorities continue to be on things like technology, which is good. I didn't say it's very good, we need it, but if our emphasis is on those things without heart, without the human, what makes us human, education has to go along, not just with knowledge, science, technology, it has to teach. It has to be able to instill in us, help us to discover that what makes us human are the soft things of respect, empathy, fairness, justice. If we are to live together, that is how better societies are achieved.
Yeah. Dr. Akpezi, I'd love, and this is something I'll ask Pragya about, but let me put the third question up so our attendees answered. What would education look like in the future? Unequal, tech-based, standardized, globally, regionally, locally, personalized, or blended? So I'd like our attendees to answer this question. Then I'd love Pragya, to tell me what will education look like in the future? From what Dr. Akpezi was saying, we have a lot of work to do to make sure that education is aligned with our human values and vice versa in the society. And a lot of our attendees are agreeing with Dr. Akpezi, especially about the comment. I'll read one comment for you, Doctor. Dr. Akpezi is spot on in saying that we are quite far, even taking into account the recent revelations and reactions that have come out of the Black Lives Matter and similar activities around the world, even in countries we consider developed. So a lot of work to do. Pragya, what will education look like in the future from your perspective?
Thank you, Chaker. I think being a positive person, I think if we give central importance of well-being, social and emotional learning, and the integration to this educational curriculum with life skills as well, then we can change this reality to the future with positive orientation. As we face this pandemic, we can of course become humble and become more empathizing to our education system and concentrate and imagine how to serve the needs of our students, employers, and community as a whole. So we need to renew a commitment to listening. Listening is very powerful characteristic for every individual and every youth and all the policymakers who can bring change in the society as a whole, as Dr. Akpezi said. So I believe that listening can bring a positive enforcement through which we can bring a better society. Thank you.
Thank you. Jaimin, I will ask you, I'll list the answers that we gave our attendees and just tell me yes or no. What would education look like in the future? Will it be unequal?
Yes.
Unequal. Tech-based?
Pardon?
Tech-based? Is it going to be tech-based?
Yes.
Is it going to be standardized globally, regionally, and locally?
Depends on the context and region.
Is it going to be personalized? I want to be a doctor, I take the courses I'm interested in. Or is it is it personalized learning?
I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it will be.
Sorry?
I'm keeping my fingers crossed and hopeful that it will be.
Or will it be blended? Do you think it will be blended, interdisciplinary, and we no longer go to become a doctor, we could become, know how to operate and know how to, do diplomatic relations, and will it be blended?
Let me use another term. It will be generalized. So instead of being specific, it will be generalized.
And Jaimin, 38%, the majority believe that education in the future will be tech-based. Actually, I can see that because even in the last 6 months, we've seen how we did this big jump into tech-based education and technology. Dr. Akpezi, with this tech-based sort of, excitement, I'm using your term because I like how you describe this all excitement. So there are some people super excited. Their college is now on their computer. They don't need to go to college. It's all online. Why do societies even need college today? A lot of people are wondering this. Let's start with you, our policymaker. Do we need colleges in 50 years? Do we need institutions to go to, or should I just pick and choose some, courses online and stuff like this?
I think in 50 years' time, colleges, universities will still be needed, but what you are now asking is what form will they be? Now, most colleges that will be evolving from now, they would have, we would have virtual institutions as well as grounded institutions. So you would see that in 50 years' time, we have colleges, but they are existing virtually. They are also, grounded. That is what I think, from my microscope, it's going to be in 50 years' time. And so the question, because we're asking, and one of the questions you asked is, most of the voters, they said that education is going to be more tech-based. But then can we ask ourselves, is that education, the tech-based? Because there is a statement that is being accredited to Obama. He said that education is not a name of any degree or certificate or any technology that you can show as a proof at all. I know how to, but education is the name of our attitude, actions, language, behaviors, and the behaviors of others in real life. Because I really want us to focus, on that, because we are telling ourselves that we want this future. We want this future where people can live together. If you go back to the Delors, UNESCO Delors principles that were referred to in TAGe 2, when the ambassador was, told us, that Delors said, learning to be, learning to do, learning to know, and all that. But at the end of it, learning to live together. You don't need technology to live together with your brother. You don't need technology to care for the poor. You don't need technology to know that all children everywhere need to have access.
I like a quote that Connie Germono, one of our attendees, just commented saying, we must not forget that technology is just the vehicle. And I think this is very much aligned with what Dr. Akpezi is saying. Pragya, let's put up the fourth question. We'll do like I did with Jaimin. Let's put up the question for our attendees. Why would societies need college education in the future? Because it enables equality, diversity, and coexistence. It's the basis of strong social institutions, or it provides meaning and fulfillment for youths. Society will always need an educated workforce. Education will provide empowered, informed, and kind citizens. While our attendees are answering this question, Jaimin, if you were to answer this question, which one of these 5 would you pick? So pick one, and then let's talk about that answer you picked.
Okay, I'll be going with the first one.
Sorry, Jaimin. Oh, you would go with the first one. I meant, I was talking to Pragya, and because we did this with you. So let me finish with Pragya, then I'll come back. My apologies. Pragya, which one would you pick of these? Jaimin picked the first one, the equality, diversity, and coexistence.
Yes. So I would pick the last one. Because education helps us question, gives us an analytical mind. And I think it will also makes us humble, and also with interaction, social interaction with different beings from different cultural background. Like Dr. Akpezi mentioned, we interact and we know other people. So we with that opportunity in colleges, if we give that to our students, then it will lead a better society with empathetic people, and also with educated mind. We can progress and bring opportunities to our youth who will be the future of the nation, and also will formulate policies. So I believe in the last statement in this fall.
So you, Pragya, you are saying that education contributes to a better society in its colleges and its institutions because it, works on the critical thinking. It works on, several skills that the society needs. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, I go to Jaimin. Sorry, I cut you off earlier. Jaimin, equality, diversity, and coexistence. That's what a college as an institution does, in your opinion, for a better society. So I'm gonna read a question, and I'd like all of us to actually, think of it. From Chaker Jain. Good afternoon. My name is Chaker, and I represent Plan India. I understand the argument that learning will be less and less limited in designated physical spaces. However, the focus on physical school access to education was a boon to girls who struggled with issues like child marriage and child labor. How do you therefore think gender would be impacted in this context? So when we're talking, Jaimin, and this is for you, Jaimin, first, when we're talking about going digital and everything, Chaker is pointing out something very serious about child marriage and child labor. And in what context does this tech excitement help or not help these social, problems that societies have as challenges?
Yeah, so firstly, thanks for giving me the opportunity to answer this, because I myself was about to raise this question to Dr. Akpezi. Now, when we talk about, particularly from the gender lens, we are, and not only from the gender lens, but from overall social lens, we need to understand that what technology might not do. I'm not saying it will surely not do, but there are high chances it will not do. And what it will not do is ESD, or education on sustainable development. Why? Because you see that education is something, which you cannot get from books. I've always thought that history has a lot to teach us. We must be willing to learn. In 1937, there was this old wise man who gave the theory of Nai Talim, or new education, in which he emphasized that work and education are not inseparable. I would like to extend this concept and say that what education basically has to do is it begins from your experience, then you go to action, then you go to reflection or introspection, and then after having that proper introspection, you go to again that experience and try to make your experience more profound and efficient. Now talking particularly from the gender lens, I would also like to bring this thing into the picture. When we talk about this thing, there is a lot of taboo which is associated with it, and I think it has to be done away with. The thing which I'm talking about is CSE, or comprehensive sex education. And this comprehensive sex education is something which is very, very necessary, because the main purpose of education should be making a civilized society. If someone from Nigeria or someone from sub-Saharan Africa still have to go through female genital mutilation, we cannot say we are living in a civilized society. If someone from LGBTQ plus community has to go through the discrimination, we cannot say that we are living in a civilized society. And in the same context, in some pluralistic countries, someone has to go through the stereotypes on the basis of race and ethnicity, and even for that matter, religion and caste in Indian subcontinent, then we cannot say that we are living in a civilized society. If you look at sustainable development goals, then comprehensive sex education between SDG 4, SDG 5, SDG 10, and SDG 11, that is quality education, gender, reducing overall inequalities, and making cities and communities more sustainable. And this education is an integral part of education on sustainable development. So coming to the context of the who has asked the question, we need to have a comprehensive sex education as priority.
Very interesting point. I'm going to get to this point with Dr. Akpezi in a second, but 46% of our attendees agree with you, Pragya, that societies will need college education in the future, because education will provide empowered, informed, and kind citizens, followed by what you had mentioned, Jaimin, about college education enabling equality, diversity, and coexistence. It's amazing to see, because we've been in the last couple TAGes, a lot of the answers were geared towards putting education and economic empowerment, the power of making money out of a purpose of education. Today, we are acknowledging those human values. I would like to thank a lot Dr. Akpezi, who started this session by telling us and reminding our generation of the human values that do matter a lot, as important as education in dealing in our societies, when we have to deal with one another, deal with our institutions, and so on. Dr. Akpezi, someone from our attendees was mentioning about demands of persons with disabilities in digital education system. How to address additional demand of persons with disability in digital education system. Are we actually, in this whole tech excitement you mentioned, are we actually taking into consideration the needs and the changes of people with disabilities?
Yes, thank you. I think that, in talking about technology, we've said a lot of maybe some of the dark side of technology, but then technology also has its positive side. And we have found out in education that a lot of children and people with disability have been able to use technology to catch up. So that is the positive side of technology. But like you said, there are still some people that would need the human connection. And again, I think it was Jaimin that mentioned people in my part of the world. Like now, when COVID happened, a lot of schools in my country, the private ones, the posh ones, they were able to continue. Some of the, posh private universities, elitist private universities, it didn't even bother them because it just switched like that. But many of the public universities were not ready. What about the schools? There are some schools that don't have access to electricity. They don't have, so you can't even begin to talk about them having access to television for the education or other means. So we still have people like that. And again, mention was made of girls that are now exposed, to people, the violators. So if you have a situation where most schools happen online at home or wherever the person is, then it is easier for people to be molested and nobody will know. So society, we have to come up with answers for all these different scenarios so that nobody is left behind, because the future that the Sustainable Development Goals envisages is a future where no child is left behind. So we have to think outside the box of technology and see how we are going to reach, those others and the other, precious people that you have mentioned.
Thank you, Dr. Akpezi. Two questions are going to come up right now, which is, what should education be doing in the future, and what should education not be doing in the future? Let's go first with what should education be doing in the future. Pragya will answer this question, but let's see, Pragya, the different answers on there. What should education be doing in the future? Make it accessible for everyone, equip learning to solve local and global issues, equip learners for work, do away with grading and critical thinking and emotional intelligence, make it fun, holistic, and fulfilling, and end in itself. I invite our attendees to pick their choice of an answer, and Pragya will be commenting and Jaimin will be commenting on the result in a bit. So this is how we'll do it again. Pragya, which one would you pick out of these 5 answers?
So I think of education, the first one, because the education, the holistic, education is important for all the holistic and non-holistic one. I think it's third. It went down.
It's the last one. You want education to be fun, holistic, and fulfilling in the future.
Yes. So I agree with that statement.
Jaimin, which one would you pick?
Okay, so if I would have to pick, I would be going for second one, that is equip learning to solve local and global issues.
We'll get back to commenting, Jaimin, on this. I just want to see what we are picking in answers. Dr. Akpezi, what should education be doing in the future out of the options we have on the screen? Make it accessible for everyone, equip learning to solve global and local issues, equip learners for work, or do away with grading and critical thinking and emotional intelligence, or just make it fun, holistic, and fulfilling?
Yes, I think, what I would choose is not there, but from what you have there, it's maybe equip people to solve local and global, so that, the mindset, knowing that life is more than yourself, and your problem is more than you care for your problem and care for the problem of other countries, of everyone,
Thank you. Let's see what people answered, and then I have a fun little activity to do with the panel. So 35% believe they want to make it accessible for everyone, that education should be accessible for everyone. 23% right after the fun, fulfilling. 22 equip learning to solve local and global issues, equip learners for work, and do away with grading, 12%. Before we move to the next question, I want to play, have this activity. Jaimin and Pragya, the previous generation. Okay, so let's talk about the generations before us. In kind of education contributing to a better society, what would you grade them 1 to 10? 10 being super successful and 1 being a fail. So let's look at the previous generations. From what we know, we're not basing it on anything, scientific here, just from what we know, from what we see from our parents and your experiences in Nepal and India. 1 to 10, how did previous generations do in education contributing to a better society? Pragya.
Yes. So we have to rate our ancestors now.
Not our ancestors, not, our previous generations, the education system that we inherited. Dr. Akpezi is saying we have a lot of work to do with it. And this education system, we inherited from, several years of hard work and research and some errors. So these errors, 1 to 10, what are we talking about?
Like in Nepal, we have many ethnic groups, indigenous groups. There are many challenges we need to address that our past policymakers and decision makers have been formulating to us. That has been coming up generation to generation. So I give them 6 out of 10 because some part of them is some values, social values, like learning from nature. In nature, like in indigenous group of Nepal, we learn from nature, we worship nature, and we respect nature. Due to this climate change now happening in global world, we respect our nature, and the indigenous group in Nepal, they are the main resource management focal point in managing all the resources, natural resources in Nepal. So I believe that we have to learn from the past generation in order to integrate the new policies as well. So I believe that we need to integrate past learnings also and unlearn the wrong ones. Thank you.
Thank you. Jaimin, 1 to 10, and then I invite you, Jaimin, to ask Dr. Akpezi a question about the education system we inherited. So I open first, please share your rating, and then it's an open question for you to Dr. Akpezi about the education systems that we inherited.
Okay, so in Indian context, if I would have to say, I'll be going for 3.
3?
Yeah, 3. And I do have my own reasons for this. Let me, explain that. When we talk about education, there are basically 2 different types of stakeholders. One, the primary stakeholders, second, the secondary stakeholders. The secondary stakeholders are the policymakers and the executive unit and the different organs of the democratic government. When it comes to primary stakeholders, these are, if education system in India has not succeeded, it is these primary stakeholders which are to be blamed. There are three components of these primary stakeholders. One, the teachers. Second, the parents. And third, the students themselves. And it is fault of, a combined fault of these primary stakeholders which have contributed in unsuccessful, how exactly our education system has been unsuccessful. Now, why so? If you look at, the first component of primary stakeholders, that is teachers, you realize that, teaching is not a lucrative job. So, it really emerges, a question really emerges that how many people in teaching section are there in that sector just because they enjoy, or are they just for, giving their skills and taking the check back, the money back, so that is one of the question. When I talk about the second component of the primary stakeholders, the parents, have not parents, merrily enforced their wishes upon their children? Why that, that social imaging of their children and youth is necessary from the parents' side? And third and very important is the students themselves. Because you see, in India, we have the competitive approach. We do not have a collaborative approach. And, what actually happens, let me give, generally, I'm a kind of person who doesn't share personal story, but let me give something into this context. What basically this competitive approach instead of collaborative approach has done is few subjects are enforced on few people. I might have got 98 or 99% in class 10 or class 12. I might have been one of the toppers of the country. I might have cleared those lucrative 98.5%, but the status quo is I'm doing science and I'm not enjoying it. I was always into humanities. I was always into political science. And this is a kind of, I would say that students have basically been made a caged parrot. Till the time that parrot mimics, everyone will be clapping. But the moment that parrot tries to escape that cage, the retaliation happens from all three sectors of primary stakeholders. So a nexus between, and this follows my question to Dr. Akpezi as well, that how can we ensure a proper nexus in the favor of students and their talent, not achievement, that talent, the nexus between the students, teachers and parents? Because I see that a mentality has to be changed, but that can, as I told, that it cannot be done from top-down model. It has to be bottom-up approach. But we see that this bottom-up approach is even not working. So how exactly this nexus can be ensured?
Dr. Akpezi, if I want to just rephrase Jaimin's question, because there are a few more questions here from the attendees that sort of fit in this. The curriculum, the education system, the whole system we inherited, it focused in so many areas competitively rather than collaboratively. This is, Jaimin, one of your points, correct? It's what we inherited is very competitive. When you have a grade, when you have tests, when you have exams, when you have parent expectation, when you have, social expectation and so on. This is a lot of pressure for a young student going to pursue an education. When will we end this, this grading system and this evaluation and this, because so many people, like Jaimin was saying, they don't end up excelling because in the place they were put in, they couldn't tolerate the pressure. It was overwhelming for them. So how do we end this viciousness aspect that our generation is so scared of when it comes to education?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I think that the education we inherited was not too exam focused. It was, I think, it was a balanced type of education, because I do remember very well that, when I was in school, there was this song that almost every Nigerian child understood. And it just and the song tells you that, see, going to school is not just enough. You need character, you need hard work, you need, you need intelligence, you need to be able to work with people. So, and there was a lot of competitions, team games, storytelling competitions, sports, and so on. But it was my now generation giving birth to Pragya and Jaimin that probably got it wrong somewhere, because now it was now more about competition. Let's get my child. I want my child to go to the best schools. I want, you know, I want this to happen. I want this to happen. So somehow we missed some of the essentials, some of the things that helped us become who we are, and we handed something less to our children. And now the point that you said about the grading system and all this assessment, they now became larger than life, you know, such that, you know, you find a child, you know, goes to a class because the attention of the teacher is to say, I want my you know, some schools, because there are schools that are moving away from this, because I must acknowledge here that there are schools doing good job. There are schools that have identified these gaps and are producing, you know, more balanced students, and they have better structures, you know, but there are still many more in this trap. So a child goes to school, the child has, you know, he says, oh no, because he cannot fit in, he's handicapped or something. There's nothing wrong with the child, but there's a lot wrong with the school and with the teacher, because they're creating a setting for the majority, and you're allowing the other gifted children to drop out and labeling them, giving them names. So we need. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so we definitely need to now go back and begin to emphasize less on the assessment. We need to review the assessment. We need to review our classrooms. We need to review the way we deliver knowledge, you know, to children, you know, and give them space to discover, you know, themselves and celebrate the strength of every child. So that is more work. It is more work to do than to just give
Dr. Akpezi, Dr. Akpezi, one of our attendees, Kinga Dakpa, says, whether we like it or not, this grading system, examinations, are here to stay for quite some time in our region. Let's be realistic and practical. So between idealism and realistic and practical, where, you know, how do we get things moving? Today we are speaking on a panel, you know, organized by UNESCO MTIEP. So if there's one policy which should be, you know, this assessment examination part of the education system, how do what do we suggest? What's a policy we get there and say, this should be our proposed policy to stop this assessments overwhelming that Jaimin was talking about? What is this policy?
Assessment could become flexible. For instance, there are many, I know that there are universities and schools and primary schools now who, okay, some portion of the assessment has to do with exams. Some have to do with team projects. Some have to do with creativity. Like when I was teaching in the university, I was teaching a postgraduate class on law, you know, what I did, you know, I went to the dean and I said, this continuous assessment, I would like to give my students, you know, activities to think outside the box. You know, I want them to just go out and implement some idea, and I want to be able to grade it. And I was allowed to do that. So we need to be more flexible. So it is not just about when you sit in an exam. We need to be more creative with assessment if we want to keep it, so that it can accommodate for the strengths of other people, and it can encourage innovation, encourage creativity, you know, and more useful and relevant knowledge.
Thank you, Dr. Akpezi. Pragya, let's put up the sixth question. What should education not be doing in the future? I think we discussed a lot of these answers. Continue restricting it to a few with resources. Continue focusing on grades, marks, and jobs instead of the well-being. Continue focusing on STEM. Continue keeping it as top-down, or keep it politicized. Jaimin had mentioned something about the down-top, you know, learning environment. Jaimin, do you know of any country that, or any place that has followed this and we can look up to it and take it as a model, a success model?
Okay, so Chaker, if you remember, in my initial comment itself, I said that most of the countries, but not all countries, have had unsuccessful education system. So there are a few countries which have had the successful education system.
Which one? Sorry, I didn't.
Okay.
What was it?
Yeah, so from the in my initial comment itself, I mentioned that not all, but many countries are there who have had unsuccessful education system.
No,
Now
I
it
want you
means
to
that,
mention for me. Yeah, I want.
I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that.
Mm-hmm.
So that not all, quote unquote, means that there are few who have been able to successfully deal with education. Now, where are those countries? There is only one region of the globe where you find these kind of countries, and that is Scandinavia. If you look at the Scandinavian, if you look at the Scandinavian countries, be it Denmark, be it Sweden, be it Finland, those countries have adopted more a sort of bottom-up approach. That is, things begin at grassroots level itself. They have not imposed some policies on students. And I'll give you, this comes from the concept of Nai Talim as well, that education system needs to have two characteristics. One, it should be autonomous. Second, it should be self-sufficient. Now, where does this autonomy come from? So what Scandinavian countries like Finland, Denmark, or Sweden have done is they have given their full autonomy to students to learn at their own pace, to learn what they want to learn how they want to learn, and to learn at which place they want to learn. And this autonomy is something which eventually leads to self-sufficiency. And it is a kind of cycle that if self-sufficient institution is there, it will be an autonomous institution, autonomous in the context of giving more freedom to the students and the learners. These ultimately leads to the self-sufficiency of that particular institution.
So Scandinavia is your pick of an educational system, and it is where bottom to top is going on, inclusivity and connectivity. Pragya, yeah, would you like to conclude the point, Jaimin? Because we have 15 more minutes.
Yeah. Just one comment that I'm not saying that Scandinavia has done 100% bottom up, but yeah, if I have to pick, then it is close to 100%. I'm not saying it is 100%, it's close to 100%. And okay. I'm 100% sure there is no other region apart from Scandinavia.
Okay, thank you. Our answers, 47%. So almost half of our attendees believe that education should not continue focusing on grades, marks, and jobs instead of the well-being. This is the most popular answer, which Dr. Akpezi, we were talking about. And Dr. Akpezi, I love the example you gave, and this is for our attendees, for us as well. Dr. Akpezi was creative in how she did the assessment for her students by grading or having an assessment based on other activities, extracurriculars that students were engaged in. So maybe, part of our education in the future should be creative about the assessment of students. This answer was followed by, what should it not do? It should not keep it politicalized. So this was 16%. Then 15% was continue restricting it to a few sources, continue keeping it as top down, and continue focusing on STEM. Pragya.
Yes.
This is great so far. So far, if I want to sum up where we are at right now, Dr. Akpezi has been our mentor today in how we, in this educational system, how do we reimagine it, rethink it? How does it contribute to a better society? And how education is not limited to the classroom, but also to our social values, our human values, our kindness, as a drive of education and as an outcome as well of what educational efforts should be doing. This two sort of pillar relationship between the society and the education makes me wonder, how will society contribute to education in the future? This will be our next question for our attendees. It's going up right now. Pragya and I will look into these answers, and Pragya will be giving us her feedback on all the answers that are shown there while our attendees do the voting. So how will society contribute to education in the future? Will it provide the resources to make it free and equal for all? Will it provide an enabling environment, provide the necessary ideological framing, provide meaningful work, or oversight and regulation? So Pragya, how about you lead now? You're the moderator for the next minute. You lead this question with your remarks until we get the answer, and then Jaimin and Dr. Akpezi will comment on the answers of our attendees.
So thank you, Chaker. So the question is, how will society contribute to education in the future? Personally, I believe that providing the resources to make it free and equal for all is the ideal answer, because with the resources given to education systems by the society is very important, especially equal access resources to all, despite of social inequalities, despite of race, despite of geographical areas. It is very important for all the resources to be distributed in different parts of the world equally, and it plays an important and significant role in contributing to education in the future, like resources, like funding as well. In different parts of the world, we don't get adequate funding to education system. That has been lacking the education system in different rural areas of different parts of the world. So I would like to ask question to Dr. Akpezi about the lack of resources of especially of funding in different parts of the world, which have been struggling in implementing good policies and education system.
Dr. Akpezi, great question from Pragya, and I want to add of it something from our previous TAGe session as well. Is funding always the scapegoat when it comes to talking about education? Whenever we want to talk about education, there's always that, oh, we don't have the money. Where is the money? And you know, is it badly spent, or are the budget skills not good? Is there corruption eating a lot of this budget? What is going on in resources, in finances, and the education sector?
Yeah. What is going on is that we put our money in things that it's really important to us, not really in things we say it is. It's one thing to say something is important. Oh, it is so important for children to go to school. We all want to see all children go to school. But then when we put our money, we put the money on military. In 2007, the Youth Exchange of the United Nations Environment Program, they did this very, very good research on the MDGs. And they said to achieve universal primary education for all children will cost 11 billion. Now you listen to this. How much is spent on alcoholic drinks in one country? I won't mention the name of the country. In UK, one country in Europe.
You did.
In 2004, 56 billion was spent in one small country in 2004 on alcoholic drinks. Listen, on ice cream. Maybe you're saying you're good. On ice cream and frozen dessert, 36.6 billion. Yes. Then if you want to go on bottled water and maybe things on military, I think I had the figures for military equipment. It was 1,001 billion. Now, how much do you need to achieve universal primary education? 11 billion globally. I mean, so you could see, so the issue, the problem, like you said, Chaker, is not money. Everybody says, oh, there's no money. There is money. There is money.
But it's not spent on where it should be spent.
There is no political will, and we want to spend.
Dr. Akpezi, who do we hold accountable? If we know that based on these TAGe sessions we're having and the future activities of UNESCO and GIEP, we're going to actually put a bunch of recommendations and put our insights. I want to name few bodies or few people or few that we should hold them accountable. Who are these people? Can Dr. Akpezi, Jaimin, or Pragya tell me, if you want to hold, I want you to name or to be specific about who do we hold accountable. There is one, you mentioned government. What yes. Government should we look into the government?
Governments, because you go into governance because it's a position of trust. The presidents, the prime ministers, those that are in charge, of the national assemblies, the legislature, of the government. You are there for the people. You are there for every child. Then you go there and forget them and begin to budget big finances for weapons to kill those same children, because they end up suffering, from it. You use it, you put it for cars, for luxuries and things like that, and leave these important issues. And my first blame is on governance structure, right from the president or prime ministers or whatever you call them, to the legislature, and to the executive.
You know what, Dr. Akpezi, I think with our 6 finalists from TAGe and our 3 policymakers, since we were talking about grades and everything, I'd love if UNESCO MGIEP, together with our finalists, we go through every single country and give them a grade. Let's grade our governments and our leadership as to how much are they spending on education versus alcohol, versus war, versus weapons. I think Abel and Kwani and all the UNESCO MGIEP team, we'd love to see a grading system. Wouldn't you like, Pragya and Jaimin? Let's put grades. Let's publish a sector where it says, country X, you got 10%, 10 out of 100. Then we can start holding accountable. If our generation is being assessed and is being graded and tested from when we are little, we've learned something about assessment. And Dr. Akpezi right now saying, well, let's make it creative. So let's make it reverse. How about we start evaluating countries based on the specific thing Dr. Akpezi was saying, how much do we spend on education versus on destructive, unnecessary, harmful sectors and areas. So with our 6 finalists, we'll be talking about that in future TAGe sessions as well. This will get me to our final question, actually. And then we're going to take Q&As from people. Did I put up the last question's result? How will society contribute to education in the future? I believe I didn't put the results. Let's put the result for this question, please. Provide the resources to make it free and equal for all. I love it. I love the fact that we're so aligned with our attendees. Jaimin, I'm going to get to you now. I know you're raising your hand, but I'm going to get to you with a question directed to you. I disagree, Jaimin. This is from Chaker Jane, who's being very active with us today. Thank you, Chaker Jane. I disagree, Jaimin. It's like blaming the victims. Teachers are poorly prepared, unsupported by systems, and poorly paid. Parents pay a huge opportunity cost to send their kids to school who fail to teach students basic skills. So in reply to your comment about teachers, that was a disagreement with you with a comment. And there was also a question about this specific point as well, why people are not interested in becoming a teacher, according to what you said earlier. So Jaimin, the floor is all yours.
Okay, so firstly, I'll be answering the question, and then I'll be, continuing the comment of Dr. Akpezi as well on that, who is to be held accountable. But first, coming to the question, why teaching is not a lucrative job. Whenever, whatever profession we are in, we find that profession lucrative or amazing or fabulous only and only when we have respect for that profession. Unless and until the people who are planning to get into the profession do not respect that particular profession, it is not going to be lucrative. And what are the after effects of this, disrespect for the profession, and how does this particular disrespect eventually emerge? See, basically, when we talk about respect to the profession, particularly with respect to teachers, we need to understand that it's a give and take between students and teachers. It is not something, it basically happens that you give the respect and you take the respect from both the ends, from students' ends as well as from the teachers' end. People may or may not agree with this thing, but this is what I'm saying from my own experience. So unless and until people find respect in that job for teachers, or they start respecting that particular job, this lucrativeness is not going to get created. Now, just to mention and extend the comment on who is to be held accountable, and this is, I think, very, very important. And let me take you to the another side of the coin. Basically, in future we see that open economy is bound to happen. So privatization of education institution is surely going to happen. Now here comes the concept of corporate social responsibility, that all the corporate sectors which are going to get involved in the privatization process of education institution, they have to be held responsible, and they must be having some responsibility towards all those people who are involved in the institution. This end of corporate social responsibility is has already taken place in Scandinavia, is slightly taking place in India as well. After Honorable Apex Court, Honorable Supreme Court of the country ruled that 2% of whatever profit corporate sector holds, they have to put it in the welfare of the society. So the concept of corporate social responsibility has to be extended towards the responsibility towards the students of their own institution, because in future we see that privatization of education institution is inevitable. Unless and until major political revolution happens, this privatization is inevitable. So what we can do is bring CSR, or corporate social responsibility, and hold the corporates responsible and make them accountable for the needs of students who are going to get involved in the institutions.
Thank you, Jaimin. We are gonna get into Q&As by people. I'm gonna move to our last question. This will be a brief answer by Jaimin and Pragya and Dr. Akpezi. If you were to change one thing, what would that be? I'm going to put up a list of options that we put together for our attendees and our panelists. So just you pick up one answer right now of these, and we don't have to discuss in details the answer. Just Jaimin, which one would you pick? Teachers, curriculum and examples, the very purpose, accessibility, Latinate, nothing, it's all good. So what would you like to change about education system right now?
If among all five, if I am given only one option, then it will be option number 3, the very purpose of the education.
Thank you. Thank you. Pragya?
I'll go for purpose as well.
Purpose. And Dr. Akpezi?
Yes, I'll go for teachers, because if you get the right teacher would lead the children to the right purpose and give the right curriculum and the right exams. The right teacher would, do what is right.
Let's put up what our attendees had, voted for this answer, and then I'm going to move to the Q&A from our attendees. In the Q&A, I'm not sure. So yeah, the very purpose, 34%, followed by curriculum and exams, accessibility, teachers, and nothing, it's all good. So with the question and answers, I have few comments I'm going to be reading, and the team may be inviting certain people to be speaking. So if you heard a voice that you haven't heard throughout this session, then this is one of our attendees asking question. CD Malpani has a question. How can entrepreneurship education play a role in holistic development of children? Pragya, you had talked about entrepreneurial spirit and the change in the, in the sectors we study. So how can entrepreneurship education play a role in holistic development of children? And this question is asked by CD Malpani. Thank you, CD.
Thank you, Siri. It's a brilliant question. So I have been talking about different kind of skills that can enhance youth, especially for future. Like we already have been seeing teachers taking the students out into the field to learn new and exciting settings. So in the future, we're going to see much less classroom learning and more like hands-on activities, like in practical training. So allowing students to really get to grips with the subjects. So it will give practical education of entrepreneurship and also enhance their communication skills and also like team building skills. So like I mentioned earlier, learning at a desk is great for the basics, but students really begin to develop skills when they're asked to apply them to real life situations. So this perfectly fits my answer to this question. That's why project-based learning will become much more important in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Sushmita from India has a question that I'd like to direct to Jaimin. Why is the profession of teaching is taking a back seat among students who graduate? You had mentioned, touch based on a little bit on that, but why do you think it's getting more and more, according to Sushmita, it's getting unpopular?
As I mentioned, that first and very foremost thing is, as such, you do not have respect for that profession. This is number one thing. Whether people like criticism or not, but this is the fact and we have to include it. Second thing is, again, when we talk that what has exactly happened to the, to teachers. So, and why they are not able to contribute properly to better education system, at least in the Oriental part. So let us compare two things, the teachers in Scandinavia and the teachers in Oriental. Let us compare and let us see what actually happens and what is the
So I'll ask you something about this comparison, since you want to compare teachers in a geographic place and one into another. Which teacher would you say knows how to use technology better?
Scandinavia.
Why is that? So is this the problem? And this is one of the comments from the people to you, Jaimin. Why are we blaming the teacher when it's that same educational system that produced the teacher is the one that is at question today for better society or not better society? So is this the teacher we need to hear put on that seat, or is this the education system that's given to the teacher and the educational support? Colleges is not only student, college is a student and a teacher and a researcher and everyone. So are educational institutions failing our teachers as well? Let's be direct into answering this question.
Okay, so there are two questions, and firstly, let me go to why teachers from Scandinavia are better at technology. When you talk about the LMIC, that is low and middle income countries, the South Asian countries, the least developed countries, what really happens is people are not ready to accept the change. Rather, what they want is they want themselves to get accepted by change. And this is not how things go on. You have to learn how to accept the change. And if you see Scandinavia, since the very beginning itself, they have learned how to accept the change. They have learned how to move on. Whereas and that is one of the reasons that you see that even the social inequality in the education sector is very, very minimum there. In fact, if I'm not wrong, it's around 100% literacy rate and education has been achieved in those Scandinavian countries, if I'm not mistaken. So first, people, and in particular teachers, should learn how to accept the change. That is number one thing. If I'm not wrong, can you please respond to your second question? I mean, can you just tell again your second question? It was something pertaining to teachers, but...
Yeah, and also someone, Sika Jane, also commented on something similar to my second question. Here and this is a comment from me, myself, and I'd love Dr. Akpezi or Pragya to also get involved. I want to a little bit eliminate the tone of blame towards the teacher. As Chaker Jane is saying right now, Jaimin, teachers are part of the society itself. Please, let's not trivialize the issue. Teachers are part of this educational system that we need to address. So as teacher, as a profession here, and a big greeting to all the educators of the world and all the teachers and professors and everything. But how can you compare someone in a country where, economically and politically and everything, so, on a relaxed level, when we talk about the teacher in another country, it's not only the teacher as a person going to educate, it's an entire system politically, socially, that could be affecting. Dr. Akpezi, the question is, when we talk about educators, how much is the current educational system failing our educators, those individuals who actually create the generation, the following generations? Is the system failing them that much in support? Yeah,
we do I run a lot of teachers training programs, and I also work with teachers at the local level in my country. And you can see that the political systems around them have failed them. A lot of these teachers, their salaries are not paid. So, recently I was reading in the paper a teacher, I think it was a teacher from either Kenya or Tanzania that won the Best Teacher Award. This was a teacher living in a rural area and was using his salary, his meager salary, to feed the students because the government would not give enough. The same thing happened in my country. During this pandemic, cars, big vehicles, and millions of dollars were distributed to politicians. Nothing was given to the teacher. Instead, a lot of teachers were owed salaries, so that we had to look for charity organizations who would give them food to eat. These are the teachers. So how do you expect, and they are still staying on the job. I think teachers are my hero any day. And when I was growing up, teachers were respected. They were the most important people in the society. But again, my own generation, we turned things around, because we started taking our children, we made them feel that, oh, you are richer than that, putting emphasis on money. You are richer than that teacher. So they go to school, some of them in big cars, and the teachers are over-earned, and they just feel, okay, now it's about money. It's about who you know. The politicians don't pay them salaries enough. They owe them salaries, and they are not celebrated in society. They are not given any incentives. So I think this generation, the politicians, the governance around them have not given enough support to teachers. Teachers are heroes. They are my heroes anyway.
Thank you. They are my heroes. Sorry, Jaimin, because I am running on a very short period of time. We did get the comments. We should just be reminded we can't compare, especially when it comes to human beings. It's oranges and apples here. It's not like a teacher in a place is more advanced or more than the other. It's the system that gave this teacher, as Dr. Akpezi is saying, and from UNESCO MGIEP. Before we move to our last two questions, a huge greeting to all educators, all teachers. Sorry, yeah, we will.
Just a 30-second comment. Okay, so
but it has to be a new comment, not repetitive. Please, please get to the point, because I have to give Pragya also some time to speak about this topic.
Yeah. So I've never said that we have to blame teachers. What I've said is the primary stakeholders are to be held responsible, and primary stakeholders include three parts: teachers, parents, and students themselves. So this was the thing which I initially mentioned as well.
And also there's one thing, it's the government. It's what Dr. Akpezi was saying, it's the support system. It's the community. Teachers are underfunded. We go back to education here. Teachers the jobs they're getting may not be, look at here, I'm in Lebanon. I see that teachers are getting paid, less than $100 to survive. So let's always there's an Arabic saying that I love about education. من علمني حرفا كنت له ممنونا للآخر. Whoever taught me one letter, I will always say thank you, because this is my hero. So to our heroes, to our educators, thank you. And we hope that UNESCO MGIEP and all these TAGes, this one and the future TAGes we hope to push for better support system for us as students and for our teachers. These are our heroes. Gets me to move to the last two questions I want to put up. Me and Pragya will end this session. The questions will be actually our attendees' feedback on our session today. How happy or unhappy are you with our TAGe today? So this will be up. How I will do a quick summary while people. So two questions: how happy are you, and if you were to change something about TAGe, what would it be other than the moderator? I'm joking. Let's get into a little quick summary, and then I'm gonna have Pragya do a sort of the closing of this summary. So we talked in this TAGe that societies will be going more and more tech. We talked that, and also Dr. Akpezi reminded us that there's a lot of work to do, but also Dr. Akpezi reminded us to stick to human values, kindness, the social values, the community values. These are also part of our education system. It's a two-way relationship between education and society. Education does contribute to a better society, and a better society should be a support system to its educational institutions and its heroes, like we all agree with our educators. We also talked, and this was brilliant today, the importance of education and empowering, informing citizens in leading change in our society. And we have a few recommendations for policymakers to be creative in the way assessment is carried in educational institutions. If they have to be, they should call Dr. Akpezi about some ideas. Also, we should be integrating more accessibility, connectivity, and creative ways of learning. And last but not least, our teachers, our communities do need the support as we face major challenges, whether it's a pandemic or other issues. I think they're telling me I need to end this. So Pragya, after this summary, what is your last comments on these points today?
Thank you, Chaker. It was a lovely session today. You were a great moderator as usual. So I believe that it requires decisive attempts by policymakers in every part of the world to swing into concrete actions, especially inclusive, integrated, and participatory strategic planning and implementation model that is targeted at the teachers, like you said, are superheroes, and all the marginalized, all the male, female, everyone should be included in a proper education system in every part of the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pragya. Jaimin, in 1 minute, 60 seconds, counting now, final remarks about our session today.
Okay, so it was a great session as such. Dr. Akpezi answered it well, you moderated well, and Pragya as well. We need to move forward from an IQ-based education system towards an EQ-based education system. And when we move forward from IQ-based education system towards an EQ-based education system, the respect for teaching profession as such gets generated, number one thing. Number two thing, our focus should be on ESD, or education on sustainable development. Number three thing, experience should be given due priority in education and not the bookish knowledge. And number four thing, let us not shy away from positively scrutinize whatever aspect of system is doing harm to the system, education system as a whole. So let us not shy away from positively scrutinize whatever needs to be scrutinized. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaimin. Dr. Akpezi, I will first, on behalf of, I'm sure, all the attendees, UNESCO and GIEP, thank you so much, because you got me and our panelists and our attendees leaving this session knowing that our generation has so much work to do towards our education system, towards our heroes. And we also have one key word I love that you said earlier in the session, adaptability. How adaptable can our education system be will determine how it contributes to our society and vice versa. Your final remarks today will be our guide to the next TAGe sessions and to the next policy. My question to you with the remark, did we just waste an hour and a half of our time, or is this hour and a half of our time and recommendations and everything going to lead somewhere? I think this question everyone here always asks it.
Yeah, no, first of all, I have to thank you, Chaker, and my very, very able panelists, on this wonderful program. I think it's been so useful. We are talking about the future, our future, and I'm so happy that young people are involved. We need to talk about it. And again, the Mahatma Gandhi Institute is going to take the comments from what we have just done now. It's not a waste of time. It's going to contribute to 2030 vision. It's coming. UNESCO is preparing a big document that is going to guide education. So our voices will be there. Please continue to speak. Go on the UNESCO website, go on the Mahatma Gandhi Institute website, and let's make sure our voices are heard so that we don't complain later. But what I would like to say, Chaker, is that one, I really want to speak for the special needs, people that are TAGe special needs. There is need for education to normalize neurodiversity. It's so important so that we don't just call some people, disability, special needs, just because we do not understand, the variation of the human brain. So it's important for more work to be done so as to bring these people into the fold of education. Education should also include and integrate conflict resolution. We need to be teaching and having exercises on how to de-escalate crisis, because we live in a world that is filled with crisis, And I think finally, I would just like to say that education should be based on caring for each other. I mean, it's so simple. We want a better society, then it takes better people to produce a better society, because it is what we do now that is going to give birth to 2030, 2050. It's going to depend on you and I. If we are better people, we would have a better society.
If we are better people, we would have a better society is such a great quote by Dr. Akpezi. Thank you so much for joining us. Pragya and Jaimin and all our youth speakers, thank you, because this is how the future is sparked by these sessions. This is when we start talking about it. This is when we make a better future. Good news is 88% are happy and very happy with our session. 36% believe that our sessions should be, the TAGes should be more inclusive. And then 25% believe more panelists, and 32%, which is the second most popular, is nothing, it's all good. Well, two more panelists, two more inclusivity, two more, to better, better future, starting with Better Us and these TAGe sessions. Please keep following the MGIEP platforms on social media, website. Look into coming TAGe online sessions. I will end with something Dr. Akpezi said. I'm a big fan of you, Dr. Akpezi, especially after this session. The one thing is a lot of work needs to be done, and it all starts when we talk about it. And these TAGes are a place, a safe, constructive, and a place where our voice is heard. So keep joining us. Thank you all. And wherever you are in the world, we do have a big mission for this better future.